Evening, welcome to XS Manchester 106.1 FM, but not just the football social as it normally is, 5 nights a week, but the special Manchester City version, Forever Blue. I'm Ian Cheeseman here each and every Tuesday between 6 and 7, and tonight I am joined by the legend, that is Shaun 103 goals, nothing compared to a certain Sergio Aguero these days, though, Shaun. Are you getting upset by his goals?
Well, no, what I'm doing is I'm counting mine that I scored in training as well to stay with him.
He's having some season, isn't he? I mean, the game at the weekend was I personally thought, and I know that I suppose understandably he got the man of the match, Sergio, but to me, KDB, Kevin De Bruyne, was just awesome again at the weekend.
Yes. Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne, I mean, it's, him performing badly, it's like an 8. He's just so consistent. It's beautiful on the eye in terms of how he plays. When he drops deep, he still gives these great balls. When he's in the final third and he gets a shot on his left or right foot, he normally works the keeper. He's just a beautiful player to watch, and he's consistent. He's just a superb midfielder, and I think we're just really pleased to have him. We're great to have him.
If we go back a year or two, and he was a phenomenal player, I think, for City right from the start, could you have... I'm admitting that I couldn't have pictured that he was going to go on to this level. I mean, this is just unknown territory. I mean, people are comparing him to Ronaldo and Messi and saying that, well, I think Pep said that if City were to win the Champions League this year, he's got to be a genuine contender for the Ballon d'Or, even ahead of those two. And I can't say I disagree with that, but I couldn't have foreseen... I'm admitting that I'm not an ex-footballer like you. I'm not an expert like... Well, I couldn't have foreseen that he would be this good. He's just awesome. Could you?
No, I couldn't. I thought he was quality, and you could see his quality, the quality that he possesses on the ball, his touch, his vision, his passing, even his goal scoring. But I couldn't see him having this sort of impact on the season. I think a lot of this is we have to sort of give a lot of credit to Pep Guardiola as well, because he came to the club and he done phenomenally well, but he's just going into another gear. And I think it's the information that Pep's given him that's just perhaps even elevated his game. So, yeah, it surprised me to the level that he's played at. And long may it continue, because he's just, the quality that he possesses is really good.
During this hour, we're going to be speaking a little later on to Peter Barnes, who I think can give us an insight, particularly into the wingers, Raheem Sterling, Leroy Sané.
Yes.
You could say Bernardo Silva, I suppose, is playing in that position. David Silva plays in it sometimes, so we can get an insight from that. But also, we're going to be speaking to Brian Horton, former manager. Now, he can give us the insight on Pep, and you've mentioned Pep there.
Yes.
And it goes without saying, really, but maybe I'll say it anyway, that Pep Guardiola is bringing things out of players that I didn't think was possible. Now, we'll perhaps come back to KDB, De Bruyne in a moment, but City were linked with Sanchez. Obviously, we know he's gone to United. With Mahrez, who may not happen in the future. And I've had City fans say to me that both of those have got sort of flawed personalities, that they're too selfish, they're too egocentric. And I've always defended that by saying, well, not with Pep Guardiola as the manager, you would see a different side to both of those players. Am I right in that? I mean, is it really all about the manager?
You are right. You are right in the fact that, players that come to City under Pep's leadership and guidance know that Pep's the main man. He has full control and the boards give him total full control. And I think players know and understand that. So, when you look at Sanchez, for instance, as a player, I think, yes, he would have been a player that was better suited to go to City or come to City, but he's elected to go to Manchester United. But I think he would have just been another player that performed well, exceptionally well, and even improved under Pep Guardiola.
Is that in the head? Is that in the head?
I think players know what Pep's about. I mean, yes, we see City week in and week out, but even the players that sort of see City, every other week or, twice a month, they look and they can see what he's doing from a distance. And players will be queuing up to be wanting to play for Man City. And they'll just come there and they'll just be, like dogs wagging their tails. And, sort of like, yes, give me the information, wanting the information, sponging it, because they know that it's going to improve them. and they're going to win things.
On Sunday, I was watching the United-Newcastle game, which obviously was a great result for City. But I was also looking at the quality of that. And in fact, there was another game, I think, on Sunday, the early game. I've forgotten who it was between. But I was looking at both games and thinking, and I half joked it, but I also meant it. Ederson could actually probably play as an outfield player in the teams that I'm watching here.
Yes.
Because we saw the footwork that he used at the weekend was just exceptional. Could he seriously play as an outfield player, do you think? Or do we just get a bit carried away?
Well, the reason he's comfortable is because he was an outfield player. And so therefore he's very calm and composed on the ball. But you speaking about Man United and, I actually had a text going back and forth with Rashford's agent. And I just said to him, I can't see United's identity in that game. Whereas you see City play, you see the identity. There's certain things that occur on a consistent basis. And that's because the team played to a certain pattern. And I really couldn't see the pattern with United. It seemed like, really good players or great players that are playing individually. And hence, this is the difference, I think, what you're seeing with United currently and Man City.
Is that why when City are going through this problem with injuries, I know there might be possibly a couple of them back for the Basel game, but certainly at the weekend against Leicester, again, no David Silva, no Leroy Sané, no Jesus, no Mendy, of course. Without those key players, you'd think, well, it might fall apart a little bit, but it hasn't done. Is it because there is such a defined system and such a personality of the way that they play that even when Zinchenko comes in, who's a relatively inexperienced youngster, and Foden came on as a substitute, that it doesn't matter because it's all about the system.
It's all about the system, and some people may think, well, perhaps there's a lot of rigidness about it, but there isn't. There's a freedom within the framework of what Pep looks for, and what he's looking for is these quality players to make the right decisions at the given time. But what I believe he shows them is these pitches will occur several times, and then you have to choose are these two or three options, and those will be your options. And the players know these options, and so therefore we're just picking teams apart. So no matter how teams play, if they decide to press, he's shown them the pictures for okay, if they decide to press, this is our way out. If they decide to drop and park the bus, so to speak, then these are our options, and this is how we can still get players in the pockets and get people like De Bruyne and Silva facing their defenders and sliding through balls and working their defense. So I think he gives, within the framework, there's still freedom, but he lets players know these are the options. And I think the players are well aware of these options and what he's looking for. But that's not only in possession, but that's out of possession. And when perhaps we've lost the ball, he's looking for Otamendi and Stones or Laporte. He's looking for these players to be pushed in, Vincent Kompany, all the defenders, whoever's playing, to be pushed in to assure winning that second ball and keep players like Fernandinho to assure we keep that sustained pressure. So this is what's so special, I think, about Pep Guardiola.
I'm going to ask Brian Horton this as well, as a former City manager, in a little while, but this might seem very simplistic, so try not to laugh at me, Shaun, right? Because don't forget, I'm just an amateur who watches from the sidelines.
The game is simple.
Right? Well,
it's us that complicated.
Well, the two things I'm going to say is that the thing that strikes me when I watch this team when it's playing well, as it did against Leicester, is that they play, and it does sound simplistic, but they play on the front foot, that as soon as a player gets the ball, rather than taking a second to look around and see what the options are, and maybe get a breath, maybe create a little bit of space, there is no hesitation in looking almost for a killer ball or to make a surging run from a standing start at full pelt immediately. And every player seems to buy into that. And I've never seen it done quite as emphatically as that, as I'm seeing in this City team. Am I right to say that's what one of the differences is?
It is, and I think 90% of what you're saying is right. The 10% is what I would say is there are points when the players recognise there's a point to lull the defence or the opposition into sort of a daze, and that's when they slow it up. So what I mean is, if there's an attack, and
how do they know that then?
I think you sense it as a player. You sense it. I.e., if you've had 3 attacks and you haven't quite broke through, then what you do is you move it back along the back line, and players just regroup back into position. And so this is now where you start to get the sense of lowering them.
So can that sense be taught by Pep, or is that
that's
just
exactly
the
what
players?
happens? That's exactly what happens. He's teaching the players how to recognize. Yes, we've had 2 and 3 sustained attacks. To go for the fourth, it's, I suppose, off the top of my head, it's like a boxer, and you got them, and you got them in a position, and they're expecting you to sort of keep pounding them, so they got that defense up. But then if you sort of step away and you be a little bit more cute, then you could perhaps get that killer punch. And I think it's more like that. It's saying we've had 3 or 4 punches, come away, move it around, shift it around. You may keep it for 7, 10 passes, lowering them a little bit, and then all of a sudden you go again. And this is where you'd see, in this situation, you'd see Sterling running off the line, or Sane running off the line with a great quality pass after this lower passing. And I purposely think he coaches that in the players to recognize those situations.
That's a great skill. If that's what he's doing, and it's wonderful. We know it's wonderful to watch, but to get inside his mind would be fascinating, wouldn't it?
It would. To sit and have a dinner with him would be absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
The other thing that, again, this might sound a little bit simplistic, but when I'm watching the game, I know that these days the games are played on perfect surfaces, both home and away, to be fair.
Yes.
So therefore, there's never any ice, there's never any lack of grip. And yet, one of the things that players do is...
Sogginess of pitch as well, yeah.
Well, and whenever a player, and this seems to apply to them all, is in a tight position, it's as if Pep, because they all do it, has said, always play it back the way from where it came. Don't try to turn and risk losing it. Because a number of times I see a ball played into a player who's very tightly marked, and it might not go to the same player, but it goes back in the same direction, rather than the more complicated thing, which is to turn, and then you could potentially lose the ball. Now, you're looking at me now like I'm a bit daft, which is not unusual because a lot of people do that. But
I think that's just awareness of the player. Again, when the players are in those specific positions, there's an awareness of knowing that where the pressure's coming from. I think Pep will be coaching. This is where the pressure will come from. And once you start to be aware of the pitches, then you start to know, yes, that I was taught, or I was coached, that's where the pressure's coming from. But you now start to be aware the pressure should be coming from there. And you're still aware that it may come from the right side or the left or straight behind you, but you become more aware of it. And when you start to become aware of it, you see it before it comes. And when you see it before it comes, that's when you are clever enough to go, I could just reel it on the outside of my foot and turn, as opposed to just...
Gundogan's great at
just
that.
bouncing it back. Yeah. So I think that's an awareness, but I think they know where that pressure is coming from. So that's awareness of the player, and I think that awareness is also being coached as to when we've got teams in a certain position, a ball may go in the pocket, and they'll know this player from this area is going to come and apply the pressure. And this is why they may say, all right, that's the time to bounce it back. And if they're fully aware and they're really on the game, they'll do a turn because they just know that in that moment they're just really hot and they're on, and nothing can stop them.
Well, it also seems to me that, and this one's very obvious, so even I'm confident about this one, when the player gets the ball, I'm sure Pep's saying, make sure there are always at least 2 of you open so that the player in possession has got the alternative. Now, that might seem fairly obvious, and there's lots of games and lots of teams that I watch that maybe there's only ever one option, and there are times when there is no option, so that player just has to hold on to it and wait till a player runs. But it seems to me that City always have players running all the time to make sure that a second the player gets the ball, in that instant he's always got 2 open options.
What you're saying is right. I don't think he says make sure they have 2 options. I think he coaches and manages a system that automatically makes them have 2 options. So he doesn't say make sure the 2 options. His system and how he plays assures that there's 2 options. So he doesn't have to say, well, make sure when he receives it in this area, he's got 2 options. No, I think his system and how he coaches assures that there's 2 options.
I love talking to you about tactics because you absolutely analyse it. I know you do. Let me ask you one other question before we bring in Brian Horton to this conversation, which is the question that a lot of City fans are talking about: 16 points, mind the gap, and all that, which we love, obviously, as City supporters. But the mathematics of it are now that if City continue to win, then they could win the league on Derby Day, or, as some City fans would say, even better than that, have won it, and therefore United would have to give them the Guard of Honour. Now, I wouldn't be asking this question so much if City hadn't won again and United hadn't lost at the weekend, because there's a lot of City fans still saying don't take anything for granted. And I'm not taking anything for granted, and I don't think you would either, Shaun. However, I just want to ask you this hypothetical question. If you had the option of City winning the league on the day of the derby or having won it so that United would give a Guard of Honour, would you take that? Would you want that? And before you answer it, I'm going to say I don't actually want either of those scenarios to happen. And there'll be City fans kicking the radio and thinking, what is he on about? I thought he was a City fan. You want to rub United in it. I'm thinking that would be the best possible motivation for United next season if they were forced into that Guard of Honour if City won it. Or would you just rather rub the noses in it if you had that opportunity?
I think Pep's thinking, right now it's 16 points. Can he make it 19? And then, where it ends up come when it's Derby Day, then he'll take it and accept it. But I think his aim right now is, can they just win the next 3 points?
That's a nice diplomatic answer. I'm asking you, Shaun.
But my opinion of it would be, United's had so much success. I would love for it to be a Guard of Honour at Old Trafford.
Well, it'll be at the Etihad.
Sorry, at the Etihad.
But yeah.
With
So
United,
you would?
With United, yes.
Oh.
Yes, I would.
Well, anyway, let's not tempt fate. We perhaps tempted fate.
But I think Pep will be looking, can we make 16, 19?
He will, no doubt about that.
And when the derby comes around, if it happens to be that the league is won, depending on that game, then
you'll be smiling.
He'll deal with it then.
You'll have it. Right, okay. That's Shaun Goulter. I'm Ian Cheeseman. This is Forever Blue. I'm Ian Cheeseman. XS Manchester 106.1 FM. Shaun Goulter is with me, former City player, of course, who scored many, many, many goals. And I'm going to be speaking next to a former City manager. But just a quick reminder that if you know of people who, well, there might be somebody, for example, who's in Basel at the moment with City and thinking, oh, what a shame I can't listen to XS Manchester. Well, first of all, they can if they download the free app from the App Store on your device. So you can listen live, or you can download the podcast after we've finished and tell them, oh, you missed a treat. Shaun was on, Brian Horton was on, and you can download it and listen to it at your leisure. So bear that in mind. Now, we've been speaking, Shaun, you and I, about Pep, and obviously Brian Horton was a manager himself, and I know that you've got that skill yourself anyway, but Brian did it for a lot of games, and you were at the game at the weekend, Brian, weren't you? And I would imagine that being a manager yourself, you look at Pep and look at him in a completely different way that mere mortals like I do.
Yeah, I always watch what they're doing, to be fair. Man City look after us fantastic when we go there. So I'm always in close proximity to the two managers, the benches. And I always look at their reactions and stuff like that. And, Pep plays every ball for them almost, doesn't he? And they're just a pleasure to watch at the moment. Some of the football is unbelievable.
Shaun and I were speaking a few minutes ago about the way that they make space for each other, the way that they play on the front foot. And Shaun's talking about there being an instinct among players as to when to sort of almost attack as a group and when to just retain possession. Is that something as a coach yourself you can teach players to have that instinct of when to do it? Because it must be very frustrating as a manager to sit and know what you want them to do and not actually sometimes be able to do it.
Watching them, he wants them to attack every minute, doesn't he? They just. Take Walker for example. When he made that goal, he just ran and ran and ran. A lot of other players would have not even bothered chasing that fullback going into that far corner to chase the ball down, and then Maguire knocks it square and they score from the thing. So it's not just about playing football, is it? The work ethic is unbelievable, and. He insists on that. You can see him all the time wanting more. They had this 6-7 second ruled in at Barcelona, and now it's very, very similar now at Man City. So without the ball, they're just as good. With the ball, they're probably as good as anything at the moment. I mean, I watch all the football going, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and it's right up there at the moment. What he's done to the players is give them absolute 100% belief, for going from the goalkeeper to, De Bruyne is obviously at the moment possibly the best player in the world, and he's just oozing with confidence. Otamendi looks a completely different player. Delph, when he's playing left back, looks a completely different player, and he just gives them massive belief. And obviously they've got to be able to play for them for Pep to be picking them. And Sane, I mean, go through it. Sterling, what a season he's having. I know he missed one at Burnley, but generally over the season he's transformed him to a different player.
I know cynics on the outside, because they go on about all the time about how much money City have spent, and we know that they have spent a lot of money, would say it's all about just buying players and having the best players. And no doubt, let's not be naive about it, that is part of it. But from what you're saying, do you think Pep's big skill in bringing this group together is about his motivational skills, his tactical skills, his man-to-man skills? What is it that makes him so special?
What he does, I mean, you can see him. He puts his arm around people. He kissed Sterling the other week, didn't he? But what he also does, when he needs to be really, really, nasty is not the right word, but when he needs to be brutal and take somebody off. I've seen him take players off in the first half if they're not doing what he wants them to do. So it's not just about praise. He gets on. I'd love to go and see one of his training sessions. I really would, and I'm going to ask that question obviously over the next few weeks if I can, because I'd just love to see how he works, because we all want to play good football, don't we? Generally, most managers want to play good football. I know some go more direct and whatever, but when you got the players that they're playing, like I just said about the goalkeeper, he could play in midfield, couldn't he? He is just exceptional on the ball, and then going right through the team now. They're just a marvellous team at the moment.
Have you seen Pep work then, Shaun?
I haven't, but I would actually. A conversation, sitting down and have a conversation will probably be equally as important as watching him do a training session, because he's absolutely fascinating. But a question I wanted to ask you: how you doing, Brian?
I'm all right, Shaun. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. If you're managing against Man City, what approach do you take? And I know that's sort of a real out there question, because it depends on your players. Let's say you've got Man United. For simplicity, how do you approach? Do you park the bus? Do you mid-block, or do you press? What would be your way, you think, to get a result against City at the current? It's a hypothetical question.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question, because what do? You go and press them up the top, and they just play around you. Probably the best team I've seen perform against them this year was Wolves. And Wolves just absolutely, I know it wasn't the full team, they changed it around, yeah. I think it was a Carabao Cup, but they totally sat off their striker, and there's only one striker, sat off, and he probably was about 20 yards in his own half as well, and they just sat back and let City have the ball. And they should have won that night. They hit City 3 times on the break, one-on-ones, and... Yeah. Bravo saved them that night, didn't he? And then obviously they won it on the penalties. But if you open yourselves up against Barcelona, Real Madrid, you're asking for trouble. But the inevitability is that you sit back, like teams do, and once they score, it's almost game over, isn't it? So it's a very, very hard thing to do. Yes. I know some managers go, and I've spoken to a few that have gone there and they've got beaten 3 or 4-0, and they go in, well, we should have had a go. So you might as well have a go, mightn't you? I mean, listen, you have a go and you get beat 3 or 4-0, and everybody's saying, why have you opened up? So it's a great question, Shaun, really. But I think I'd probably go and defend deep like Wolves, and it's not a principle that I would normally take, because I always just go think about, let's go and have a go at them. Let's have a go, and if we lose, we lose. At least we've had a go. You know what I mean? And you being a striker,
Yes.
you wouldn't have liked to have done that. Now you sit off and you're the main striker, 20 yards in your own half.
Yeah, no, it takes a total disciplined performance by everyone. But interesting you say that, because I think back to, was Huddersfield, I think, they nearly got a result, parking the bus. So I totally understand what you mean. But for me, the only team that's gotten the result has been Liverpool, and the other team that perhaps had a chance was Bristol City, and they didn't essentially park it. They were sort of saying, you know what, we're going to get at you. We're going to be in your face a little bit more. So it's interesting. Two different ways of trying to get a result against.
Which leads me to another subject, actually, which is you brought up perhaps accidentally, but is there a fear factor now about playing City? Because the only teams that have done well, as you quite rightly point out, Wolves, Bristol City. You could argue Leicester in the League Cup tie that went to penalties, as opposed to the league games. And Liverpool. I don't think any of those teams showed any fear. So perhaps it comes back to you again, Brian, on if you were managing the opposition against City, is it about trying to convince your players to play without fear? Because everybody is in awe of what City are doing at the moment. And the question is, are teams coming now already beaten before they even play City?
I would say yes, because they're just unbelievable. I mean, the chances they create. I mean, De Bruyne Saturday, his passing and the balls he crossed in for the goals were just unbelievable. And if you've got an Aguero on the end of those, I know it's been phenomenal. And anyway, never mind the 4 goals on Saturday. But when you've got somebody serving you like that, and Sterling, credit to Sterling now, when those balls coming in, he's playing, on the left wing, and he's ending up in the middle of the box like he did at Burnley. Okay, he missed one, but he's ending up now, and I don't think he used to do that. He has now got license off Pep to go and say, get in that box as many times as you can. And what's he got, 20 goals? 20 goals?
He's up there.
So he's given them freedom, and once you get that confidence, and you can see it right through the team that everybody wants the ball, everybody will have the ball. It's just, it'd be a dream to play in, Shaun, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd love to have played in that team and getting the chances that Aguero's getting.
Oh, without doubt. But how many times would you have, you would have given that advice over the years to why players get inside the box when it's on the opposite side. That's just sort of that normal standard advice why players get. And, Sterling's getting the rewards from it. He's inside the box like a striker when the ball's being crossed, and he's there to finish them off. So, well done to him for being in the right place. But I think that information is being coached to him by Pep Guardiola.
Without a shadow of a doubt, he demands. He demands if they don't do it, then he has got enough players now to rotate, to do whatever. Like I've just said about Delph, came in and played left back because they had injuries, and he was different class till he got injured. Now I think he's back fit for the game in midweek. So just phenomenal to watch, and I love going to watch them. It's fantastic football.
I was going to say, I see you quite a bit at the Etihad, and obviously I know you've got plenty of other irons in fires, but you always have a smile on your face when I see you at the Etihad. What's your main motivation going? Is it just the joy of watching City? Is it because you're a former City manager? Is it because you want to watch what Pep does? What drives you to go there and enjoy the game?
There is an option, all of the above.
I was quite lucky, really, to play with Alan Mullery, who obviously played for England, captain England at Brighton, for 5 years. He was like that. We were allowed to just go and play. And then probably the best coach I ever worked for, David Pleat, when I went there when I was 31 and did some of the things that I did with him. And I think, I tried to take that into my management. I at Man City, where I wanted him to be attacking. I'd rather win 5-4 than 1-0, without a shadow of a doubt. And that was David Pleat's philosophy. That was Alan Muller's philosophy. And that's the new word that's come in, isn't it? But so I was quite lucky to play for 2 managers for 8 years that wanted us to play football, didn't want us to hit channel balls and be long ball. So, to see that now working to the degree that Man City are working into is exceptional.
So the answer is you're going just for the pleasure of it, aren't you?
I'd love to go. I mean, obviously, when they play, the big boys in I want to go and see Messi. I want to go and see Ronaldo. Watch Barcelona last night. They hit the brick wall last night, didn't they? They 0-0 at home against a team that was near the bottom of the league. And you will have these days. You can't, and one day City will have a day where nothing goes. But the things they're creating how many chances in a game, and law of averages, you're going to score so many, aren't they? Playing that way. And Aguero must be absolutely thriving on it at the moment and loving every minute of it with the service he's getting.
Absolutely. Brian, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks very much for giving us some of your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Shaun.
See you, Brian.
That's Brian Horton, whose side, when he was manager at City, played some wonderful football as well, obviously with a lot more limited resources than there are these days, but he believed in skillful players like Nicky Summerby and Peter Beagrie, Uwe Rosler came into that side. There were players that wanted to... He allowed his players to express themselves, didn't he?
Yeah, and that's what you always want. You want to, players want to play under a manager that allows them to express themselves, and you're seeing that. You're seeing it, with City. There is a structure, there is a framework that City work under, but there is a huge amount of freedom for the players, and he goes out and gets these quality players, but he says, all right, this is the framework. Now go and express yourself.
I heard a journalist say in a press conference recently to Pep that De Bruyne was a player that seemed to have free license, and he said that was different than when he was managing at Barcelona when he had Xavi and Iniesta, and he said they were far more disciplined. And his answer was really interesting because he said, no, De Bruyne has the same disciplines on him and still has to play in a system. It's just that he's a different type of player than Xavi and Iniesta, who were much more about being quite stationary in a way and letting the ball do the work, whereas De Bruyne is a lot more athletic and covers a lot more ground. He might change as he gets older,
yes,
but for now, he covers an awful lot of ground, so you can't restrict him to one position, but he's still playing in the system.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think of De Bruyne, De Bruyne is a great cross of the ball. He's a great passer of the ball. And passing, what I mean passing, that's long distance and short distance. So those are three. So if he ends up wide, and you say if Busquets ends up wide...
you don't want to be saying to him, don't go wide, do you?
No, because he has such quality. And if I just bring up the, Busquets, for instance, if he gets wide, he's not going to whip in the same type of ball as De Bruyne. So there you go and see where Pep's saying he's a different quality player, different type of player that perhaps can be allowed to go and roam a little bit more, as opposed to saying you need to stay a little bit more central because their qualities can hurt teams centrally.